Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Planetos Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the fans of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire and HBO's A Game of Thrones. Spoiler warning, the show will cover all material, the books, the novellas, the histories, quotes, and interviews with George and the showrunners, and all of the episodes of the show and its commentaries and bonus material. I'm one of your hosts, Brett. You can find me on Twitter at HomelyPillow.
And I'm your other host, Travis. You can find me on Twitter at Sear_Travis. We hope you enjoy tonight's show. So, guys, last week we had this really moving, touching episode, The Calm Before the Storm, in episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It really, in retrospect, was a respite before what we got last night, just 24 hours ago in episode 3, The Long Night. An intense 80 minutes, heartbreaking, stunning, shocking. It really has us, I think, second guessing where the season is going, how the show is going to end. What are the differences going to be with the books? And I know we're going to discuss all that tonight. We've got a lot to talk about. I think a lot of people came into this episode thinking they knew what was going to happen, that they thought the Battle of Winterfell would be lost. Our heroes would flee south. The White Walkers would pursue them, and man, it seems like it's over. But we're going to talk about that because maybe it's not. And we want to welcome a really special guest to the program. He is the hand of the king for the Nada Cast podcast. So he's my commander. He's my captain. I always plot against him, but that's just because I don't like Jeff and Emmett. No, I'm just kidding. So we want to welcome the one and only Wolfman Zack. Zack, welcome to Planetos. We just want to thank you for hanging out with us tonight. We know you're really excited to talk about this. Go ahead and tell the folks where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm on Twitter at WolfmanZack_ and on Instagram at WolfmanZack.
All right. So, Zack, what we do on this program is we invite fellow fans to join us. We get some information out of them, how they came to the fandom, what they like about the show, what they like about the books, etc. We're going to hold that until the end of the program because we want to get right into this discussion.
As do I.
I know you do. I know. It's been 24 hours. We normally record right after the episode, but travel, logistics, and family issues sometimes get in the way, so we apologize. But I think
I was 3 sheets to the wind, man. It would have been sloppy.
Sometimes sloppy is good. Sometimes sloppy is okay. This episode, I think, it needs a little marination. It was good to talk it through, to think about it. I mean, there's a lot to unpack. So, Zack, you're our guest. Give us your reaction.
So I was expecting, like you were saying, a lot of deaths related to last week's episode based on the character beats we saw. Is it going to be Brienne or Jaime or both of them? Are they going to have to face each other as undead? Or, all thinking about all these scenarios that they kind of largely stayed away from. And I don't want to say I was disappointed because I wasn't. It was just unexpected in kind of how they turned on that. They gave you this great wrenching episode that people are talking about as top 5 or best ever, and set up these people that you think are going to die, and a lot of them really don't. And so I was expecting to cry. I was expecting to have my heart ripped out, and that didn't really happen for me. And again, that's not a bad thing. I still really had a great time watching it. The spectacle was really cool. A lot of the character moments were really good. It was just different than what I expected, and I think in a way that for me really worked out. There's been a lot of debate in the last 24 hours flying around the fandom, and I definitely see arguments from both sides, but I'm excited to dig into this with you guys because it really is a very interesting episode.
Yeah. Brett, what was your reaction?
I think, Zack, you kind of explain it. Like I'm kind of there with you. It's interesting the choices they make. I don't want to say I'm disappointed either because it was like I think Kyle on KW Dent said it. Uh, like I saw him post something and it said something like it in a bottle or you know it's it was a great episode, but then thematically, I think it let a lot of people down. I think like I don't know. And it depends on how the rest of the season goes. Like it was like I don't
Totally.
know. I'm very conflicted with the way I feel about it.
Well,
It
so here's the thing: is you know, we obviously know that there's like a quality turn or whatever you want to call it when they kind of went off book.
yes,
And Battle of the Bastards. A lot of casual fans say it's the best episode. A lot of people that are on the more obsessive level have a lot of nitpicks about the military strategies and some of that stuff going on, and there's
hmm
things lacking. And I don't think that we would have expected something perfect in that sense
yeah,
from
yeah,
last night's episode. Like you almost expect there to be some kind of flaws because of the nature of the spectacle they're going for and the story that they're trying to tell. But I think it worked with enough in-universe realism, enough of it to make
yeah.
it all work out. Um, and you know, but I can see why people were not as or they were more bullish on it.
Yeah, it's like it was a great episode, and like the battle was amazing. Like they put a lot of work into that and stuff. I just yeah, and it's not what you expect, and that's kind of almost what Game of Thrones does. It's what you expect. We expected a lot of our loved ones to go, but they didn't, and they're still here, and we should be happy about that.
And the implication of that is that there's still a way that they could die that might even be more wrenching or emotional or
Yeah,
grounded in a character beat, because now it's not this unrealistic undead zombie thing. And you think about the first major death that really sends ripples through the story is Ned Stark.
yeah,
The first time I experienced that, I did not see that coming, to
yeah.
say the least. Um,
No, no, I don't think anybody did. Yeah.
so they kind of built in that expectation, and kind of by like sidestepping that, they can subvert that a bit.
To me, there just seems to be something missing, and I know we're going to talk about this, and when I say there's something missing, it has to do with what happens right at the end. The the shocking twist. We'll build up to that here tonight. Um, I mean, I tweeted you know,
Yeah.
and I don't, and I've had 24 hours to look at it. I watched the episode as much as I could right before we got on here tonight, just to try and soak it up, because I think repeated viewing is important for Game of Thrones, just like repeated reading of the source material is important. And you can ask my wife. I sat on the couch tense the whole time.
Oh, same, yeah.
There was just this nervousness, this fear, and it's good to be surprised. It's good to be shocked. It's just I think there's some questions to how that's possible. And I like what you all said, that we still have 3 more episodes to go. So we could have some material that either explains it better, or there could be something out there that maybe we're shocked at the end that really occurred. So I'm going to be positive. I love the episode. I think it's a great episode. It's just that one final act. Just there's just something there, and I know we'll have a lot more to say here as we
Well,
get through the discussion.
I'm kind of feeling like we might hate Cersei and Bronn a lot more. I mean, I mean, Braun may make some. I don't know. Like he may make those surprising choices that.
Well, it really
I
raises the stakes of those political
and
machinations.
Well,
I think that's what they're getting back to too. Like we're
Sure.
straight back to a Game of Thrones now, and
Yeah.
maybe that's the choice they wanted to make. I don't. Yeah, I don't
that
know.
was the point I was trying to make
Oh.
earlier with Ned Stark, was just that,
Yep.
versus the undead and this kind of like supernatural enemy. And the reason his death was so impactful is because it was grounded in reality, and it's based on the character and his honor and his family that's with him and that's not with him, and the whole political ramifications of that. That's what makes that impactful. It's not that he's facing off against some supervillain, with cool blue eyes or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I think the main thing I saw someone say last night that really resonated with me is that Song of Ice and Fire is about the ice and the fire, and that supernatural and the natural, and these things that are, the magic that is on the edges of this world that's, threatening to spill over to that plane, versus Game of Thrones, which is about the throne, and their tagline this season is "For the Throne." And that's part of why I really don't have a problem with them taking the Night King out in the third episode. And that's why I don't think that there's going to be a big explanation beyond what we've seen. I think we'll be able to go back and look at all the pieces together and cobble it together and make our own kind of version of it. But they're not going to go and have some maester pull something out. Maybe Sam's books that he keeps talking about, he'll find some story in there that'll explain some satisfying thing. But, they're bringing it back around. They're bringing it back to King's Landing. They're bringing it back to the family, grounded in reality. The supernatural threat is kind of behind them. And now there's this whole open-ended, three episode arc left to see what happens. And that's when we're going to have those deaths that are impactful, whether it be Brienne or Jaime or any of the Starks or whomever's left. It's going to hit us that much harder, I think, because it's not at the hands of a CGI monster.
But I like that point. I really do. I really like that point. The only thing I'm worried about, and I am totally fine with the longest night to have, ending pretty quickly, but I was totally fine with that because people had been suggesting that, like, I think even our last guest, Ashley, said she thought it would end. I think it ended in ways no one thought coming, and
for sure.
But I am super fine with how it's going. I hopefully it ends great.
Well,
what's great for you? What does that look like for you?
See, I don't know at this point because
let's hold that. We're gonna wrap up our discussion with some speculation, and I think we'll have
we could probably talk about it. Yeah, all night.
Yeah, I think for me, and you got to think about the context you're in. So Brett and I just spent 3 days in Ohio at Ice and Fire Con. Met some of the great people in the fandom. Wolfman Zack, you know them, you interact with them on Twitter. But we're sitting there, we're having these discussions about, is Bloodraven manipulating lineages and bloodlines and all this? Is the Night King a Stark? What was the pact between all these people? And I think that there is definitely some foreshadowing and some groundwork laid for that in the books. I think your point, Zach, and you said it very well, the Night King was a supervillain. And this show, while it deals with those supernatural aspects, it's not in the game of pitting the last hero versus the big bad. It did that. It moved through that. And we did get a very, my problem is not Arya Stark killing the Night King. I think that's excellent. And if you think about it, the context of Azor Ahai and the last hero or whatever, we've all said all along, there's got to be all of these people playing their parts to get to a satisfying conclusion, to work together. I think it's just the magical world, the supernatural world has always been the big looming threat to the entire world, and the political threat was the thing that distracted everyone, that took your eye on the ball. And we're not going to talk about what it could mirror in our own society, but the foundation is there, that we squabble over these small minor things while the real threats, the real problems go unattended and unfinished and will end up destroying us. And you can absolutely say that Game of Thrones dealt with that. I just think the books are going to do it differently. And Wolfman Zack, you have a great comment to share with the folks why it's pretty good that we may get some differences here.
Sure. I think, I was, when you were asking me for my opinion on the episode earlier, I paused because my initial reaction was so positive, and it wasn't necessarily based on my emotional reaction to what I saw. There was badass aerial dragon fights. There was all kinds of fire things going on, badass fight sequences, this, that, and the other. But I was happy right when it ended because I realized that they had set that up. Everything that happened made sense in universe for the show, the way they played it on the show and the things they cut out. But there's no way it's going to play out like that in the books. There's no way it's going to even come close based on who's alive and who's dead and how fast these things move in the shows versus the books. And so we have this thing that could still be great. Like these 3 episodes so far have been amazing, despite their flaws that we have in these later seasons. They are amazing. So we get to enjoy this and we get to talk about this and debate how the show ended, but it's not giving us these spoilers of these questions that we're asking about the others and about the Night King, because in the book there is no Night King, right? So that mythology that we crave and these answers that we crave, George will give that to us in the way that he wants to, that will be satisfying to us because it's part of this song that we're all listening to. But in the show, they get to do their television bombastic spectacle that they pulled off.
Yeah.
And we still have all of this emotional political intrigue left, which is what people have always complained about these last few seasons. There hasn't been enough of, it moved away from the book stuff. It moved away from the politics and the intrigue and this interpersonal conflict, the human heart in conflict with itself. Right. It moved away from that. Now it's just CGI dragons and big battles. Well, you know what? We had a dragon fight. We had a battle, and that's done. And now we can worry about the human heart in conflict with itself for 3-4 hours. I think it's great. I think book readers are going to be happy with how it turns out in the books. I think show fans, people that don't watch it in disgust every week, are gonna enjoy, for the most part. I think how it ends, and maybe a few things will be spoiled here and there, but we're gonna have such radically different conclusions. And I just think that's a great thing. And to me, that just makes me happy that it's working out in 2 different ways,
Yeah, our friend, all 3 of our friends, Brendan Beefish, I think said it pretty well. I mean, everyone can go listen to their podcast for their take, and they'll have a great take on the episode. And the one thing that he said when he kind of walked away from what he felt was good about the episode, what he felt was bad about the episode, he said, I think the structure overall of season 8 will kind of be flipped in the books. So you might have this battle for King's Landing and then the battle for the North, just kind of flipped around. But his point is, it's still going to, a lot of these things are still going to occur. So perhaps they flipped it. We don't know. Maybe in the end of the books, it'll be a similar locations, etc. that happen, similar timeline, whatever. But I really like what you said, Zach, that we potentially get to walk away with 2 amazing mediums giving us 2 amazing stories, with some of these overarching themes remaining, some of these characters remaining, but then a lot of differences and a lot more mythology and nuance from the book. So I think we should all be very positive about that.
Yes. Could we talk a second about the visuals and how fucking amazing they were?
So
I feel like we're
yeah. Let's go ahead
well,
and let's
well,
be
I
fair.
feel like I was a bit negative, but I want to talk about the cool shit, that.
Yeah, we're gonna get into all that. Let's go ahead and kind of start our analysis. We're gonna work our way. These past two episodes, we've kind of gone by character. I think it's better maybe this episode to go by setting, where they were on the battlefield, because we get a lot of character work in here, but there are some interesting, and we said this from the beginning, there's probably some characters that we thought were going to do things differently or have different outcomes. So let's just kind of go by setting here. So
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Just before we get started, we haven't talked about this yet, but I just want to slide it in there. I think the pacing and all those kinds of things worked really well, right?
Yeah.
The opening, the slow opening, the darkness that was hard to penetrate, the music, which we're going to talk more about for sure. But just, the lack of dialogue in the first 10 minutes or so really set the mood. They show you all the different parts of the castle. And then you have the battle stuff and the character moments, like you just mentioned, and all these kinds of ebbs and flows. And I think that aspect of it, like the filmmaking aspect of it, really worked. And I think it's important to note that as far as kind of talk about the pros and cons as we dive into the analysis here.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I liked, just to jump back real quick, to talk about the overall battle sequence. The Battle of the Bastards is this really, for whatever you think about the episode itself and some of the logistics, et cetera, of what occur, it was this gritty, realistic Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers set piece that is amazing. This battle to me was more Lord of the Rings. Something very fantastical. There was still that gritty realness, but this was Battle of Helm's Deep. This was the Battle of Pelennor Fields, kind of combined, the Siege of Gondor, etc. And I think it worked really well. Both sequences are amazing, but there's just some differences there. And I love the fact that the visuals were some of the best I've seen. I mean, this is Star Wars level filmatic universe. I mean, this was perfect. It was a little dark, but it was realistic that it was dark.
Well,
I mean, you're in these winds of winter. You're in this smoke and this fire and the darkness of the north. This medieval setting. It's not going to be bright and shiny and easy to see.
The DreamWorks intro visual that they get, like, DreamWorks Studios or whatever, where they pop out of the clouds on their dragons and you just see the moon and they're just like, it was just like, that was a really, like,
it was stunning.
Exploring. Yeah, it was awesome. And then they're like, we got to go back down here. Like, we could just take off, or maybe that, I don't know if that went through their minds, but I was just thinking, like, you're above it, just go, But and then they have to pop back down into it.
Yeah, that was a great visual of them just kind of hovering up there above the storm. And I think it was John maybe first who just nosedive back down into it, and then Danny came in. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was so good.
So let's start at the beginning. Every character gets this little moment, which was perfect. As you said, Zach, I mean, my stomach was turning. Little to no dialogue. It was the sound of footsteps. It was the sound of the armaments being put in place.
You could feel the cold.
You could feel
through the screen.
Cold. You could also feel like the nervousness of you're getting ready to shit your pants because something is coming. And I thought it was done so remarkably well. And they positioned everyone on the field of battle. You could see the storm, the winds of winter, as I've seen them referred to, which is a great reference, slowly coming. Then you get these soft hoof steps coming out of the darkness, and a shape begins to emerge. And oh my God, it's fucking Melisandre.
So here's one where the leaks kind of prove false.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
the leaks I read and what I was just expecting, honestly, was that she would come back with other red priests and priestesses.
That's
and that
what
they
my
would
pay. Like that's what I
they're
thought.
throwing flame grenades and they're making fire whites and they're doing all that stuff. And again, it's cool that they did. It's fine that it was just
Yeah.
her because, I mean, they introduced red priests and priestesses in previous seasons. And, maybe that's a feint, maybe it's not, world building, whatever. But she's the one that we spent all this time with. She's the one that spent time with Stannis and Davos, the whole Shireen situation. And so she needed to be there. And we all wanted her back, I think, and the tension between her and Davos, that kind of brings you back into the tension between the micro and macro of what's going on in the show. This very personal, very real vendetta that he has. The last time he saw her, he said,
Davos,
"I see your face here." Fucking duck.
No, yeah, Davos channeled his inner Stannis. He was like, the good does not wash out the bad. I'm coming to murder you. And then she's,
but he's smart enough to give her space and let her do her thing too.
Yeah, but he was. I think he was walking out there like he was about to do something, and then he saw he was like, I'm curious.
He was about to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I watched it again, I didn't see this the first time, but on the second viewing, you can see he goes to pull his sword or his dagger out, and she just says to him, "I'm going to be dead before the dawn. You don't need to worry about killing me. I'm going to die. I'm going to." She realizes she's going to have to pay for what she's done, but I think it's. Look, I wanted the fiery hand rolling up in that motherfucker. I wanted Kinvara and all these people. I wanted flames shooting out of their hand. But this subverted my expectations.
Exactly.
And it's important for Melisandre to do what she did. We can't blame her for everything that has occurred. Not at all. And I think it's important that we get her point of view, and we're going to get more of that in the Winds of Winter. She may be one of the only ones, while she sees things incorrectly or she misinterprets them or whatever, her eye is pointed in the right direction. She realizes there's something up there that she's got to deal with, and I think it's touching and poignant that she's the one that comes back to help.
I didn't think about it that way. Like she could have. Yeah, I don't know.
And I think again, she goes to say, she says in season 7, "I'm going to get help," and we interpreted it like that. I mean, we came up with the fiery hand and the red priests and all this.
I think she saw a therapist, and then
she went back. She probably, she reignited her inner fire. She got confident again to be a red priest. She lit the sword. She did all that.
Here's a semi tinfoil theory for you. What if she did recruit all those priests and priestesses, but she didn't tell them to come to Winterfell? She told them to go to King's Landing. We're going to see them show up, because we're talking about, the Golden Company's got 20,000 troops, and Cersei's got maybe a couple thousand more or something. Lannister or whoever else she's got with her. And so we know that the survivors in the north are vastly outnumbered, yada yada. And I just thought of it as you were talking, but what if she rallied all those troops and she said, show up at King's Landing, a week after I show up at Winterfell or whatever it might be.
I like that idea, because I think they're gonna kill at least one of the dragons going south. I mean, that's more speculation, but Cersei's got to do some real hard damage now. Well,
she's like Zach's saying, she's got the potential. She's got the numbers on her side.
Yeah.
We don't know what the numbers were at Winterfell. I mean, it was a large army there. I mean, you look at the visuals, you look at the map. There were a lot of forces, but the fucking Dothraki were just wiped out.
Did,
Was.
I don't
we
know
were
why
talk-
what were they charging
But-
for? That
Yeah,
was
I
one
don't know. I
confusing
mean,
choice for
yeah,
sure.
the battle logistics were somewhat.
but did you
somewhat-
not
It was a killer
cheer?
visual.
the
Did y'all not
visual was
cheer
amazing.
when Melisandre steps up, lights all their swords on fire? Because I called it like a minute before she did it or whenever. I was like, she's about to light their swords on fire.
Yeah.
They're all about to. But then like the visual of them riding off, and then like they hit like this wall. Like you
Yeah.
just see
Well,
them hit a
before
wall.
that though, when
Ugh.
she's lighting them all up, man, and the speed of how they're all getting lit up, I'm just
Yeah.
imagining like the forces off to the right that can't really see what's going on, and all of a sudden everything to their left is just on fire, and all of a sudden the thing in their hand just goes up in flames. You know, like
yeah.
we see it like from like the battlements, and it's cool looking, but you think about them on the ground, that's got to be a pretty weird experience.
Yeah, I feel sorry
Yeah.
for the guy with the knife in like his back pocket, and that just goes
Yeah.
off.
But again, you have that amazing visual, and you have that, you know, after all this threat or like imminent doom kind of silence and cold and darkness, you have all this light and this hope, and they run out and you see it slowly extinguished a little bit, you know,
Yeah.
away from the field. And it's creepy as shit. And this is another, you know, idea I had last night was that you know, friend of the podcast and podcasters, poor Quentin's theory on the Eldritch Apocalypse coming in the books. To me, this turn towards horror, a horror film, confirmed that is something that we're going to see in the books. You know, they had these conversations with George, talked about the end game, whatever. They're not going to pull that off. They're not going to have the Krakens. They're not going to have, you know, vortexes or whatever happen in the show. But to me, those winds, those obscuring snow and fog that we saw that made everything hard for us to see the wall of it, the force and energy of it, how it's all tied into the Night King and the Weirwood Network and all these things. To me, that was a big signal that that's something that we're definitely going to get in the books.
And that's something we get in the books. You know, it's not specific, but you hear that you know, campfires go out quickly. People with torches, they lose sight because the winds just instantly blow them out. So yeah, I love it. I think it's, you know, we can argue whether it was a smart move to send the Dothraki in like they did, but visually it was stunning. It probably cut back and forth between people, you know, watching and the flaming swords extinguishing probably 6 or 7 times. It was astonishing, and you started counting it like 100,000, there's 50,000, 10,000, 1,000, 100,
Ooh,
done.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was really awesome. They did a really nice job with that.
It was it was really terrifying to watch, like just seeing it.
So the horror movie started, you know, that was
Yeah.
the thing. It was like that little glimmer of hope, and then right back to like, holy shit, what are we still in for? You know, we haven't even seen it yet. We already just lost a whole battalion of troops, which I don't know if that's a conversation for this time and place, but the way that the Dothraki culture kind of got wiped out there was a little they're done.
Did the guy did the few guys that came back, did they like instantly like cut the braid, cut the braid, we're out. But
they probably weren't worried at that moment about that.
Nah.
Like it was the Dothraki are. I really thought when they went out, I was like, oh my god, they all died, but they're gonna have to come back. Like the Night King's gonna send them all back, and then the Unsullied are gonna do the 10,000 of Cahor type thing, and it didn't happen. But like I was like that would have been so like freaking cool, and like but anyways, but
Sure,
they're
sure.
defensive. The Dothraki are not any use inside the walls of Winterfell or whatever, so I thought they were gonna kind of use them to sweep or whatever. But
Well, and
They should have at least had bows and arrows, man.
yes,
Yeah.
that was a good point. Someone's, I think it was Pat Sponog, a friend of the pod, said she should have lit their arrows on fire and they should have shot them. And you know, to be fair, one, the catapults were firing. Well, those catapults should have fired again a couple times as well. But the best explanation I saw, and I do think that what they were trying to do was they were trying to do a hit and run, hit and draw them into a certain thing.
Yeah.
But I think what happened was
they hit that damn wall that you.
They didn't. It wasn't a wall. It was a fucking avalanche. Like there was
a wave. Yeah,
it was a
tidal wave.
a tidal wave coming, and it just swallowed them. And you can't stand against that. So let's stay
Oh yeah,
right
you
there.
see that with the dragons. Yeah.
Right. So for people who aren't watching the next one, just a spoiler alert. Thank God Ghost survives. He's seen in the next preview, but
I was wondering.
My head canon on that is he chases a horse off into the woods and just fucking feasts there for a couple hours while everything's going on.
I thought he was going to be done for sure.
Oh, I know. It was. I actually expected him to come back later with John's storyline or something.
I thought he was going to die protecting John.
Yeah. I'm thankful that didn't happen. So the Dothraki have been defeated. So now comes the wave. The wave crashes in to the Unsullied, and I loved the visual of, the Unsullied have this. They're well known for their wall that they use, and again another stunning visual. But our folks are overwhelmed. They are pushed back. They're pushed back. It was intense. It was bloody. It was terrible. And now they have fallen back between the behind the pit, which Melisandre obviously is key in lighting. So now we've got the army of the dead coming. They are waiting. They're getting ready to push through. And that's, if I remember correctly, that's when we get the first appearance of the Night King, which was a fucking haunting visual.
Well, we see Bran warg into the ravens, right. And that's when they fly up and we see the Night King for the first time.
And he's like he's like up in this cloud the whole time, just kind of hovering there. And of course, while this is going on, John and Dany are doing strafing fire and blowing up some of the whites and stuff. But man, that image of the Night King, kind of like an evil wizard, just kind of pushing his hand out, and his eyes are just this glowing blue, and he just pushes those whites forward to create a bridge and cross. I mean, fuck. I was, oh my God, what the fuck? So now we've got the battle for the walls of Winterfell. The whites are pushing. They're coming. They've crossed onto, and I forgot. I need to back up real quick. I love the fact that John and Dany they can't see anything. They have no idea what's going on. John's hitting the woods. Dany can't see the signal to light the trench. It was so shocking.
A lot of people I saw complained about how John and Dany were kind of kept out of the battle for a lot of it. They're distracted. They can't see. They're lost in the fog, whatever. And again, it's a clever way to extend the drama. It's not a big deal because the dragons are still alive. You're going to see them in use later against whatever weapons Cersei has devised for them. But we still got to see them roast a shit ton of whites in one of the best visuals in the whole episode when they're strafing in kind of opposite, head-on flight patterns. And they're just blasting those whites, and it's badass, right? So the fact that they're lost and it's foggy and they can't see and all this stuff adds to the drama, adds to, the dragons aren't there. This Trump ace in the hole that we have, our fighter jets are, out of commission for this battle. And that's another blow. That's scary. That adds to the stakes, that adds to the drama. And these are the heroes of the story. They didn't get to play the heroes in this episode. We still have 3 episodes to see them get to play the heroes. It wasn't, we saw dragon on dragon battle. We saw John, take down a dragon, take down the Night King, all this stuff. It's fine that they were out of the picture for half of it. It got us to focus on, these other characters and what they're going through, boots on the ground, which is infinitely more terrifying. And again, grounding it back in the horror of reality versus the horror of a CGI spectacle. So I thought it was a good balance, and kind of kept us grounded in that realistic horror.
Did you guys yell dragon fight when John went straight? Look, John did his thing. He went straight after the Night King with Rhaegal. They just start going at it, and then Drogon sweeps in, just handles Viserion, and I thought Viserion was done. Yeah. And then it was really creepy too, the way the Night King just fell off the dragon. He's just like, I don't give a fuck. Like, he just like, I don't know.
Well, and even before that, you get that image of, I don't know if it was Drogon or Rhaegal, that they rip the throat out of Viserion.
It was Drogon. Okay, I thought it was Drogon's foot. Oh, okay. Am I getting it wrong?
It was when Jon and the Night King were kind of going at it.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Oh. So we've got everyone on the front lines. Davos and Arya are on the walls of Winterfell. They're firing arrows and everything. But man, we had Sam out there, Tormund, Brienne, Jaime, Beric, Pod, the Hound, Gendry, and Dolorous Edd. And Dolorous Edd was our first casualty.
He was, yeah.
Not unexpected. Not
unexpected that he died. I think to me, it was unexpected that he was the first one to die. I didn't expect him to be the first one to die.
With the people that we lost and some of the people we didn't lose, like when he went down, I kind of expected that one, but then I was really still sad to see it. But
absolutely.
And then kind of, I don't. Oh man,
he made the serious mistake in a battle. Never turn your back.
Yeah. Well, he made another mistake by. No one named Dolorous Edd is going to survive.
Sure, yeah. All right, so our heroes, if you will, they've fallen back behind the trench. Now the as we said, the army of the dead is over that trench of fire. They are swarming. They're swarming the walls. The World War Z image of them just piling up and climbing.
I love that. Like, I loved that imagery, like just them piling, like when they were just sitting out there. I didn't make the call before the episode started. I was screaming this I actually got to watch this one with my brother. I got back off the plane, and like he hadn't watched it yet. I was like, let's watch it. And so the first one I got to do with him this season, but I just saw him staring at the fire, and I'm like, oh my God, they're about to throw themselves in there like sand on a fire, like what firefighters do. Like,
it's an expendable resource.
Yeah, and then just one goes in, and next, and I'm like, oh, yep, there it goes. Yeah, so like the piling of like,
and so
visually
when they breach the trench there, and we get Sandor and Beric and all those guys down on the ground fighting. To me, that was, it was a clear callback to Blackwater, where he's just rendered kind of immobile by the presence of fire and these kinds of overwhelming odds. And I thought that was kind of an interesting choice, because you have this kind of character change from the Hound to Sandor, and he's softened somewhat, and they had him come back around to his murderous ways, and you have this parallel kind of back to this initial break from that Hound character that we get so early on. That's such a significant moment that he ends up also leading to a key interaction between him and Sansa, which we haven't seen them interact yet on the show this season for some reason. So that lends me to think that there's going to be a big moment there too. But to me, that was just the most striking Blackwater parallel.
Definitely
was that Sandor callback, and I was wondering what you guys thought, because as far as like a character beat,
the initial, like when they were about to throw themselves into the fire, like the whites, I thought that was a Blackwater callback to how they set, like Tyrion Tyrion set the thing, trapped people, or the wildfire went off, trapped the boats in the bay, but then it was too much. Like there were so many crashing ships. They built a bridge, and like Stannis's men were using it to get onto land, and 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 then the Sandor thing. Sandor was out there fighting at that moment, and but this time you can see they do like a POV shot, and there's fire everywhere, but it kind of pans up above the fire, and he's not even paying attention to the fire. It's the dead that are scaring him. He's over the fire, like, and yeah, but it was still like the same like callback to Blackwater, just a different fear now. And I just thought it was fucking amazing. Like,
No, it's a great point because it's like, what's the one thing that can really transcend that other deep seated fear that he has? It's the undead. It's this, and again, which ties back to this Eldritch apocalypse and just this kind of um, spectacle, multi-dimensional reality, planes of reality being broken. Like you're looking at skeletons and zombies attacking people that you've camped beside and fought against and all these things, and it's just it's got to be like taking hallucinogens, man. It's got to be like being on a shroom.
Yeah. All right, so excuse me. All right, so the walls have been breached. Our heroes are falling back into the courtyard. Grey Worm and the rest and the remaining Unsullied are now in the castle. Lyanna Mormont and the Bear Island warriors have started to engage the battle, and the battle spills back into the courtyard and the steps and the interior walls. What did you think about the giant busting through in the battle with the Mormonts and Lyanna? What did you all think about that scene?
I loved it. I mean, I know it was fan service, but that's one of those things I kind of didn't expect her to die, um, because we get the loss of the Mormont house with this episode, and I thought maybe she was going to carry that on, but now I don't think show wise there's any more Mormonts. But it was really nice. She stabbed the blue eye of the giant, and went out like the badass she was, So
Yeah, I think it's interesting. She's kind of a divisive character. I never had a problem with her. She speaks very vociferously and plainly, and has these kind of like rallying moments that some people might feel come off as cheesy, especially from a child actor. I think she did great. I think that she did well enough that they expanded her character a bit. I don't think they overused her at all. She had her moments here and there when they needed to be there. We got to see her fight, which is badass. She took down a giant, which is like one of the fucking coolest things you could possibly do.
Yeah.
Kill a zombie giant. I thought when he was picking her up, I expected him to bite her head off. I thought he was going to take a big old bite and rip her head off, and that would have fucked me up. That's the kind of shit I was expecting out of this episode. And when that didn't happen, that was also super cool. And when she killed the giant, that was fucking cool. And I loved it. And so she got to go out. The people that don't like her character can be glad that she died. She doesn't really have a point beyond whatever she was doing in the North and being cool with her troops and being a little badass that she is. And she got to go out in one of the coolest, most badass deaths on the entire show. Entire show. Yeah. So is she going to be a good big character in the books? Probably not. We're not going to see her like that.
Well, she was intended to be one scene and done. She was intended to
exactly
be, when Sansa and Jon and Davos go to Bear Island, like that was it for her. But the actress did such an amazing job and was so memorable. Yeah, so memorable that David and Dan were like, we're gonna have more of this girl.
I really loved her, like her battle cry scream. Like she did not back down. It was great.
That
Like,
fits with
Sure.
the Mormont women.
Yeah.
Not just the Mormont women, the Mormonts in general, but especially the women. They're some badass fucking women.
I didn't think
see.
about it that way. I think that's our present for not getting the others, like
Mage and all them, yeah.
yeah, like we don't get them, and yeah, I blanked on their name when I
Well, and
but we don't get
also,
them, but we get Lyanna, and we get some
so an
healthy fan
interesting
service.
point that you guys, I think, are kind of helping me unpack here, um, is we're talking about like the deaths of the northern houses, or even like the Dothraki, but we're talking about the Mormonts and the Umbers and a few others. And again, the events in the books aren't going to play out the same way, but I think it's just analogous that in these battles to come in the books that we're going to see northern houses completely wiped out. Part of this whole rebirth and regeneration spring theme that this is all tied into, and it might not be the same ones on the show, but it's just signaling to us that this is one of the consequences of this crazy existential threat, is that whole bloodlines are wiped out. It happens in holocausts and genocides and famines and natural disasters and non-natural disasters. And I just thought that was kind of an interesting point.
Yeah, no, I think we're definitely gonna lose. I think we're gonna lose a lot of major houses, like that just completely wiped out. I think I thought about today is like, you know, Sansa, like Arya may not have. Well, I don't know. Arya's. Everyone thinks Arya's probably that's not her thing. She's not going to bear any children. But
She doesn't want to live in a castle and be a lordling or whatever.
And then Sansa is potentially going to pass the Stark name off, because we've seen an example of the Stark name surviving through the female line, and they just said you're a Stark now.
Let's jump to. We've already had some really amazing sequences in this episode. We've had some really terrifying ones. But we get two settings. One in particular, I think, is extremely creepy, and that's Arya in the Winterfell Library.
Oh yeah.
That is shot like a horror film. It's shot like a zombie film. It has elements of kind of Victorian era settings in old horror movies.
With a super minimal score.
Right. Very silent. She's, again, back to her training as a faceless man, going around like a cat, just slightly moving, all of these things.
All of her training comes into play.
Yep.
From the second episode or whatever, first or second episode, where we see her doing the swords, and she gets needle, and all the faceless man stuff, everything comes into play. And that's another reason why we'll get to talk about the end, that I don't have a problem with it being Arya, is because they built it into the character.
What I really loved about her, though, is there was that last jump scare, but when the jump scare happened, the knife was instantly up the zombie's throat. So
I'm gonna have to watch it again, because it was like it was her perfect set of skills working, but also just like she turned a corner and blind luck helped her.
No, it was habit. It was habit. She was just like, you scared me, and
yeah.
And she was already scared, so she was already tense. But
she
walked into it.
Brett, to your point about the Hound looking at the dead and being afraid, we had some fear in Arya's eyes this episode.
I loved it. I loved to see some human, like her be a human again.
Yeah, and I think that's something that this season has done well. Arya last season got a lot of criticism for a number of reasons. This season, they've really let her be more human, more Stark. And she's just overwhelmed by this relentless force that just won't stop coming. And I think it's a great thing that that's the impetus that pushes the Hound to act, that Arya needs his help. I love that. And I said that from episode 1. that Sansa's got Brienne. Brienne's going to be there for Sansa. Arya's going to need someone, and I thought it was going to be the Hound, and I love that. I love the fact that, she escapes the library and into the arms of Beric and the Hound, and then they have this awesome chase through the hallways of Winterfell.
Well, that's where you see the transition there, the difference that I was looking for earlier between Sandor now and the Hound at the Blackwater. He was thinking about himself in the Blackwater. He was self-preservation. And you see him stuck in this moment. And, Beric saw it just, as the audience did. What's the thing that's going to snap him out of it? It's his love for Arya. And that's that kink in the armor, or whatever you want to call it. He's got that, obviously, the gruff exterior, and he's embraced his murder man energy. But the thing that snaps him from his fatalism and his acquiescence to death is his love for Arya, and that carries all the way through that brutal hallway sequence. With him and Beric protecting her. I expected there to have Sandor go down, or Arya, but Sandor go down, have Beric bring one of them back with the kiss of life. We were kind of talking about this on Twitter earlier. But that whole sequence, it tying back into her experience with them in the caves when they were trying to kill each other, and now they're rallying behind her to protect her, and they don't know what this thing is. They know they're there for a reason. They've talked about it, that they've been brought back, basically, or at least Beric has, and that they're there in present. Because the Sandor we don't think of as a white or a fire white or anything like that, but in essence, he's had this resurrection. He was left to die, and we see him dead. In the books, it's not even quote unquote confirmed that he's alive, but who he is, which we're seeing this version of it in the show, is this kind of different person, and he goes through his own kind of death and rebirth cycle there. So this whole sequence is just extremely my shit. You got Beric, your undead, Brotherhood Without Banners leader. You got your badass, super tall killing machine protecting Arya. This cramped, terrifying, unrelenting wave of undead. It all worked. And then you get to Mel and that whole sequence, and it's powerful stuff.
All right, so Zach, you already alluded to it, but Beric goes down like a champ, and I think it might be the Great Hall. It's one of those big interior rooms in Winterfell where the
no death speech there.
No, yeah, we'll talk about here in just a minute a couple of the deaths that I think could have used maybe a little more poignancy.
I was just gonna say though, like it was realistic. Like you're not gonna always be able to...
Yeah, sure.
I like
it's kind of symbolic that he loses his flaming sword and his his light kind of goes out. That's when when the whites are able to overcome him and kill him and everything. But the Hound and Arya enter this great hall, this large room in Winterfell. They barricade the door, and there's Melisandre. And she's in pep talk mode. She's really giving people what they need to hear this episode. And they have they have it on the walls beforehand. They have she and Arya have that interaction where they recognize. Arya recognizes that she's seen her before. And Melisandre tells her about the eyes, which is a callback to the episode in season 3 when Melisandre
retcon callback.
Retcon, right. But when Melisandre comes to get Gendry for Stannis,
it's good.
Yeah,
it's a good
I think
callback.
it's a definite retcon. I mean, as poor Quentin pointed out on Twitter, it's the Ghost of Highheart who says it to Arya in the books. But anyways,
oh no, I thought she said it in the TV show to her.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
yeah, the Ghost of Highheart says it to Arya.
Yeah.
Melisandre said it to her in the show.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, my bad.
So Melisandre, Melisandre gives Arya this look when she says the blue eyes.
Yeah.
And when you watch it the second time, I mean, you can probably pick on it the first time, but when you watch it the second time through, she gives her this look when she says blue eyes, and you know exactly who she's talking about in that moment. And it's a knowing look. And I just think it's more of this kind of like unspoken acting that pretty much everyone in Game of Thrones excels at. It's a really
well, and when we get to the end of what happens in the end, it's Melisandre says it to Arya in this moment. She says, "Blue eyes, that you'll shut forever." What do we say to the god of death? Not today. And the Night King, Night King is the god of death. I mean, he's the god of death. So even though it's a retcon, and I totally agree that it's a retcon, it's what they had. It's what they did.
It worked out.
It worked out. Yeah, it absolutely worked out. And I think the scene back in season
I didn't mean
3,
it as a negative.
No. I'm not saying you did. I think a lot of people do mean it as a negative, and that's fine. But in retrospect, you can say, well, she meant that Arya was going to go on a killing spree. She was going to kill all kinds of people, and then she was going to wear faces and all this stuff. But Melisandre sees things sometimes incorrectly, especially at that time in her life. So it's a retcon that I think works okay for what the show gave us. But Melisandre inspires Arya. Again, Arya at that moment, she's frightened, she's scared, she's hiding, she's thinking, how the fuck are we going to get out of this? And that's the last time we see Arya until the final sequence. So I want to go to the next creepy fucking location, and that's the crypts. So we haven't talked about the crypts yet. We got a few scenes here and there of Tyrion and Sansa and Varys and Missandei, Gilly, Little Sam, and Shireen 2.0 down in the crypts, hiding, waiting for whatever's going to happen, talking through how they're going to survive. You get some really tense moments in the beginning between Tyrion and Sansa. You get Missandei just like, basically, fuck you, Sansa. Not having it. Don't talk about my Dragon Queen. But then we get what a lot of people believed would happen. The kings and queens of winter wake up. And that's scratching on that stone, and the way it just started slowly crumbling. I thought that was done really well.
Terrifying, right?
I thought at one point I was like, oh no, John's gonna have to kill Lyanna.
Well, so here's the thing about this scene is that people were saying it wasn't going to happen because all you're going to get is unrecognizable skeletons or headless bones, and Ned's bones were boiled, so it's not going to be impactful. And also, like, everyone's saying the crypts are the safest place, so it's very fucking obvious that the crypts aren't safe at all. And so they're telegraphing this thing, which turned out just to be one of those things they put in there for viewers that don't really understand foreshadowing that well, Yeah. It's just one of those things that's in there for kind of like your casual viewer. And they did this thing I didn't like, which was, the characters in universe are pretty dumb for having this oversight. But they also kind of didn't push it too far, and they didn't have it be, oh, we have to have Sansa face Ned's undead, headless skeleton. They avoided that part of it. So while they kind of like went down this road I didn't love, they kind of did it in a way that, I think made sense at least. But then you have this other thing going on down there with Sansa and Tyrion, which is, I don't know how you guys feel about, she's forced in this marriage as a child bride in this weird kind of situation she's not in control of in any way. He was, kind enough to her, but there's like this weird dynamic going on. I don't know that I think that was a good character beat for you guys. That worked for you guys. Halfway worked for me.
I liked when he like looked at her when they went to hide and he didn't have anything to say. and because it's
Right.
not always, you don't always have something to say. Like you don't always have.
You're facing the fucking void, right?
Yeah, and I like that, and you get that with Grey Worm. Like he panics too. Like everyone's panicking, and because you, and it's always that just overwhelming. Like it's just an overwhelming thing. You don't know what to do. Because I personally was hoping, uh, he would lead a charge, like a battle the Blackwater thing, and like help get everyone out or make the crypt safe again. And I thought, Sansa was going to use the knife, and it's not a criticism towards either character or whatever. I just thought maybe the writers got them wrong because I don't think they would have done that in that situation. Maybe there's a reason, but
Yeah.
but I do get like the hesitation, the being scared because everyone is, because I don't feel like Grey Worm would naturally do it, but I mean, we've
Well,
never
so
seen an undead army
right.
running at us, and like they're used to living people, so I understand. Like, I can understand them panicking because that's not something you've seen before. So
Right.
that's not a criticism on my part, but
What worked for me there, talking about the crypts now, is in the way that it was another callback to Blackwater, right? With Cersei and the poison that she had for Tommen and Ilan
is that what
Payne
you
on
thought she was going to do
standby.
with the knife?
So yeah, so that
That's what
was
I
my
thought
initial
too.
thought, like a couple of days before the episode, is that there was going to be some parallel there, and kind of what I saw out of it was that she was going to basically, they were like, we're going to, cut each other's wrists or whatever, kill each other back here instead of being turned into this or being killed by these guys instead. That was kind of like what I got out of the kind of unspoken space between them, and I did like that moment of humanity between them when they're looking at each other and he kissed her hand. It's just kind of like, here's this thing, and who, we're here, we face death, we're doing the best we can, we're here together. Who would have thought this is it? Like, you're a human, you're alive, you have a pulse, like at least we're here together at the end of things. But when the dialogue came in, and they're talking about, maybe a little bit before that, I forget where it falls, where he's talking about, oh, we should have stayed married and it could have been this thing, and it's just like, well, I don't know. I don't know. Like, is that even important to bring up? Like, is that really what you're going to talk about right now? And maybe that's realistic because he's been drinking 2 skins of wine. But
Yeah.
I don't know. What
Well,
do you think?
I think he was just sharing like what you had in common, maybe,
I
or what they did.
I'm gonna save my comments on that till the end because I think it's going to be important going forward.
Okay.
But again, I did like the Kings and Queens of Winter waking up. I thought it was done well. I never thought we were going to see just some bones coming.
Yeah.
I never thought we would see Ned Stark, anything like that. I thought that was all crazy, but I thought it was done well. And look, those people, sure, some of them have been buried down there thousands of years. Some have just been buried down there hundreds of years. But they're in a cold climate. They're in a tomb beneath. There's some preservation that's going to last.
And they're usually the Silent Sisters. I mean, kind of, don't they do?
Yeah, they do. They do some preservation. They do some preservation.
So it would make sense
if mummies. They're not like, I don't know. I mean, they would have been.
Yeah.
After 100 years, or 1,000 years, it doesn't matter. You're decomposed.
Right.
It's like I can suspend my disbelief for that.
Sure.
Yep.
I think you have to.
I think it's just going down.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy. Yeah, it's a fantasy world. I mean, we've got to give a little bit of benefit of the doubt. I did see some people saying, "Oh, these are whites that tunneled in." And no, that wasn't it. I mean, they were coming out of the tombs.
Yeah.
Well, that was another thing I thought might happen, was the secret tunnels they alluded to. You might have some coming up that way, or the
I did
might have escaped that way.
I did think the tunnels would play into it somehow. Either they escaped or the whites came in that way or something.
The tomb thing was like the least of my critiques, because like in reality there'd be no like dead like randomly throughout like the halls of Winterfell, but it was a creepy scene, and I'm willing to like, whatever, you're going for the shots. You're not. It's a
Right.
cinematic thing because, typically you're going to keep falling back if you get underwhelmed in a castle, and then you're going to go to, they've got castles are designed for contingency plans pretty much.
Sure.
And so if something falls, you're going to fall back into another area. You're not going to get mixed up. So the tomb thing bothered me less than the Arya scene walking through, and it was a great scene, but like logistically doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's
right.
it didn't bother me, still.
Right. So while all of that is going on, John and Danny are battling in the air. They're trying to find the Night King. Obviously, we know that the Night King has fallen off his dragon. Rhaegal has crashed. John is on the ground. He's chasing the Night King, and Danny comes in. Danny comes in on Drogon and blasts the shit out of the Night King, and nothing happens. Nothing happens.
That was so fucking cool, man.
He fucking smiled.
I know.
Smirked,
the most emotion.
So dirty.
The most emotion the Night King's ever had. Just that little smirk.
Which, obviously is instantly memeable. Maybe that's why they left it in there, but
no,
it was badass.
I loved it because it was such a callback to like the first chapter of the books where they were kind of playing with Waymar Royce.
Totally, the laughter.
Yeah. And
definitely.
And I think that was a criticism people like gave the show, like that they don't have any like emotion. So I'm glad they gave him something.
You could tell the rest of the White Walkers were,
getting ready to
they were smiling. They were they had this evil grin. And that visual of those 11 or 12, 13, however many of those White Walkers coming in the main gate of Winterfell, that I love that visual too. The ice blue eyes of the White Walkers, I think, were really, they were turned up to 11 in this episode. Drogon is swarmed by those whites. I thought for sure, oh no, not another dragon. Like, no, please no. Danny falls off. He takes off because he's like, fuck, I've got these ticks on me. I gotta get the fuck out of here.
That was wild, man. That was
wild.
Again, just the abject horror of him. They kind of teased it with 1-1, I think, in Hard Home and all that, when he's just covered in them. But just to imagine the fear that Drogon's going through and Danny's going through, watching it, and us as viewers keeping in mind that we've already lost a dragon to our protagonist team. But that visual of him flying upwards, trying to shake him off, is just like chilling,
Yeah. So the Night King, John decides he's going to be the last hero. He's going to chase the Night King down. And the Night King just turns around and he raises his arms, and all of the dead come back.
Fucking loved this scene.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I will say the one criticism, and we can talk toward the end, none of the characters that we knew that came back, as far as I can tell, Lyanna didn't chase Jorah, Ed didn't chase Sam, those type of things. And
that was a super interesting choice.
That's a very minor nitpick. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's something that we were all talking about before the episode and expecting, like we were talking about earlier. Is Brienne or Jaime gonna have to fight an undead version of the other, Lyanna and Jorah or Danny or whomever? The Missandei and Grey Worm, everyone was expecting one of them to go. They're like heavy-handed in the foreshadowing, which is why some people started saying maybe neither of them. But I think it's cool. I think it works.
Yeah. No, it definitely, like, it was fine. Like, I mean, because they did show Ed getting back up, but there was not a fight, and I was like,
he just kind of fell in line of the swarm
there, and And honestly, I mean, there could be extended footage, like just stuff that got cut that they did that just didn't make it in.
Yeah, and they've already actually released one of those because apparently Tyrion and Sansa do kill a couple whites down
see,
in
that's one of my
crypts. Yeah,
criticisms is I
yeah.
would have really
Well, they
loved
cut.
to
Yeah, I would
to
too. They
see
cut that scene for
Sansa
some reason.
because yeah, I mean
Length.
they gave Daenerys like a sword. She's never had one. It would have been super cool to see Sansa doing
Do the same thing.
something.
Yeah.
Like I mean, yeah, it would have been.
I
It would have showed.
She
It would
has
have
that
showed
sweet
their
armor. She's got to
dynamic.
put it to use, right?
Yeah.
Right. I have a thought on that one too that we'll get to at the end. Why they made that choice. All right. So Ser Jorah comes to Dany's rescue. He's fighting off the whites that are swarming her. Dany does, like Brett said, she picks up a dragon glass sword or a dragon glass spear, and she goes to town on the whites as well. She's not going to let anyone kill her. So while all that's going on, and now Jon is rushing through Winterfell. He's fighting whites. While Viserion is blasting blue fire. You get that visual of the flame and the fire and the liquid just spilling out of his
So
throat.
cool.
Oh, it's awesome. It was awesome.
So imaginative.
So now, while all that's going on, the Night King is slowly making his way in the Godswood the whole time. Theon and the Ironborn and Alice Karstark have been defending Bran. And we get some really good moments leading up to what happens in the end.
Wait,
that
Alice Karstark was out there.
Alice Karstark was there. Yeah.
Was she? Was she? Well, I didn't notice that.
You see it in the very beginning, and I'm glad you actually asked that because I wanted to bring up this shot from the beginning sequence when Sam is kind of bringing us through the courtyard, and you just see him look, and it's Theon and Alice Karstark and the other dudes going with Bran to the Godswood, and it's just like the weight of the stakes in that sequence alone, just them passing by, like, we're gonna go wait for death. We're gonna go over here and chill and wait for the god of death. We're the bait. We're just don't mind us, just passing through real quick. Just the weight of the stakes just were so clearly transferred to the audience. And I thought that was brilliant. So I'm glad you mentioned that because you see her in that retinue, and that's obviously a fucking suicide mission because they all end up dead.
Yeah. And I never saw her die. That could just be I overlooked it.
Everyone there was dead.
Yeah.
Everyone
yeah. I know. I'm just saying I didn't physically see her die.
I don't know. Ghost I mean, where was Bronze Young Royce? Where was he? Where was he?
He pulled a Janos slip, man. He was hiding in the cellar.
He was stuck in his armor in his room trying to.
Yeah, that's right. I thought maybe they passed like the Manderley plot off onto him or something, like where he's just gonna take it, like, you know, his 4-hour long squat.
Shit.
You know.
So we get these moments with Theon and Bran, the reconciliation. I thought they were super touching, really important. What Bran said to Theon, you know, everything that you have done has led you to this point. You're home, Theon. You're a good man. That's what Theon needed to hear.
He did.
It doesn't excuse what Theon did. Theon did some absolutely terrible things. He betrayed his family, his true family. He killed innocents.
His decisions led to a lot of deaths.
Right. His decisions led to what happened to him. And as our friend Frank Bum says, you know, you want Theon punished, and then he is. George punishes him, and you're like, oh, fuck, man. Jesus, I didn't want him to be punished.
Not like that, George.
Much.
Not like that.
Right. But Theon gets to sacrifice his life for his home, for the Starks, for Bran, for the key to winning, well, one of the keys, but the key to winning this war. And I thought it was emotionally satisfying. It was tragic. It was sad. Theon's just a great character to me. I've over these past couple of years, I've grown to appreciate him more and more. Alfie Allen is an
100%.
amazing. Alfie Allen is an
That goes a long
amazing
way towards it,
actor.
too.
Right, absolutely.
So-
So
And,
what did you all think about this whole sequence in the Godswood and Theon's last stand?
I think Bran. I'm joking here, but I think Bran didn't forgive him because he was like, "Okay, you're home now. Go die." Like instead of he could have been like, "Hey, you could just run off. Like you go here, wait like 5 minutes." Bran knows. Bran knows what's gonna happen. I don't know. I mean, and maybe he didn't, but I did like Bran's stare at the Night King. Like I don't care. But anyways, I just think I don't know.
Well,
Like
no, it's a good point because his last charge there, I thought the character worked the way that they have that conversation about home and you're a good man.
no, I loved all
it's
that.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. We're on the same page. Like it's beautiful stuff. It's earned. It's deep seated stuff from the very first episode when Theon's doing archery out there and ends up saving Bran from when he gets accosted and all that stuff. But where it kind of stopped working for me somewhat was he just, not that he should have like gone and hid and would have survived or anything like that, but just like they have the moment that he's just kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna like run into certain death. It just kind of was like, oh, well, there it is, like that's just
Yeah.
like the steps that need to get taken. And, I think it might have landed better if they'd had the conversation in like a calm moment and then there was like a big rush of action versus just this kind of like kamikaze charge,
Yeah.
essentially. And regardless of what Bran knew or didn't know and all that, it's that's whatever. It's not that important.
No, yeah, I don't really care. But
sure, but it's part of the conversation that
Yeah.
that people have been having about it, and I think the character work was great and all the emotionally impactful stuff, and then for me the actual like 30 seconds of slow motion death charge kind of took me out of it somewhat. It didn't quite end for me.
Yeah. I that's why I think I don't know. I'm maybe being too hopeful here, but he kind of he got I don't I've not seen Endgame yet, so but I've seen the last one where someone gets stabbed who might be a Stark and survives. Uh, and John told him, he can be both. He can be a Stark, and he got stabbed in the exact same spot. So I'm hoping Theon is still alive.
He dies.
I know.
You see. I think he kind of lays there and looks around.
But the only reason I say this is they gave Jorah a better death than Theon. Like Theon, Jorah looked cooler, anyways. And
it's hard to say Theon deserves life.
Yeah,
based on what he did. But I think it's perfectly acceptable to say he deserves the noble death that he got.
Totally. And he's ready to die. He's
ready to die. He could easily have gone with Arya or Asha. Jesus. Yara. Sorry.
Yara.
Couldn't remember the name.
It
could have easily gone with Yara and done their thing and going back. That life is done for him. That doesn't mean anything. And actually, if you go back to season 1 and 2, when he makes the decisions to betray the Starks and to go to the Iron Islands, like he doesn't even really want to do it. That he just doesn't think he has any alternative. And so this course of action for Theon, I think, is particularly yes, the rushing headlong. That's one of those moments where I look at it. It's kind of same way with Jon in Battle of the Bastards. Everyone's like, "What a stupid move for him to do what he did." Yeah, it is. I think that's a no chance, no choice moment in their mind.
Oh yeah,
it's completely different. Completely different for Brienne in the books because she literally has no chance and no choice. Theon wants to die a hero, and he deserves to die a hero. And
he does.
I loved the Night King just grabbing that staff and breaking it, and then just stabbing him. It was sad. It was terrible.
It was,
but it made perfect sense in the context for
and so
Theon versus the Night King. And there's no comparison there.
Exactly. And so you have this thing which circles back to our original point, which is you have this sequence that works cinematically for the show. Again, he gets his character beat. He has a hero's death that's earned, and it works out, and it's dramatic, and people cried, and people are going to remember that. And it was, Alfie Allen's like low key MVP of this whole thing.
Oh yeah.
But we know that in the books, that what's the shit that George is best at, these conflicts about family and identity and these things that Theon's whole arc is exploring. So however his death plays out in the books, which may be similar or different in who knows how many ways, that George is going to dig into all that stuff in his death sequence in a super satisfying way.
Right.
So you have it wins for the show, you win for the books, and it's not spoiled. So there's a great example of that. And I want to use that to also segue into something that we touched on earlier, which is the lack of death speeches.
Yeah.
Beric, Jorah, kind of Theon gets a moment with Bran, but he doesn't like give a big speech, not a soliloquy or anything. And the point I want to make about that is, A, it's realistic, and B, it cuts out on the cheese. And for me,
yeah,
that's a winning combination right there. I expected Jorah to have, Khaleesi, it was always, I don't know, I always loved you, this, that, and the other cheesy thing where he professes his love and she forgives him and all this shit. And they didn't do that, and it was great. They exchanged a look, and Emilia Clarke's acting in that moment to lose Jorah communicates all of that stuff without any of the sappiness that you get. So you have the comparisons here with Helm's Deep battle. And as I grew up with those movies, the more I'd watch them, I'd say, I want an R-rated version of this. I want swear words. I want blood. I want the real gritty version of what's going on in Lord of the Rings, not this kind of like Disneyfied, fluffiness version. And that's what this is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that is. There's no, soaring music on the hill and this speech of this is what life was all about and the message I want to impart. It's just like, it's just this fucked up moment where your best protector, friend, confidant goes and shits themselves on their way out and doesn't get to say anything meaningful, and that's how you remember them.
And well, I just want to say about Emilia Clarke, like her acting. I think she just said "fuck you" to anybody that was like that ever said she was a bad actor. I think she showed in that moment that it's hard to. Most of Daenerys's stuff is in her head, just like Sansa, and her that I don't know, like that crying scene. Like I mean, that was gut wrenching, and I think she showed her chops at acting in that scene. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because
what I was going to say, like as you said, Zach. Theon got his last speech in what he did for Bran, but also in his conversation leading up to Bran. So he doesn't need to say anything. And if you've been paying attention to this show and this character, you know what he did, what he's endured, and how he's come full circle back to where it all began. So I wouldn't have liked a speech from him. Jorah, I actually think the same thing. If you've been paying attention to the importance that his arc has for Daenerys, some people just don't like Jorah. They base it a lot on book Jorah, who is a little creepy, obviously. I've always liked the character. I think it's particularly because I love Ian Glenn. I think he's a great actor.
Oh yeah. I mean that. Yeah.
I just thought he should have died of grayscale 2 seasons ago.
Oh, sure, but
whatever.
That's
like he just had all these kind of chances. It was just interesting he stuck around as long as he did, honestly.
Well, and that begs the question, like, why even give it to him? I mean, that's going to be something important in the books.
Oh no, he got grayscale because he wanted to take a role and take time off from the show, so they gave him grayscale and then brought him back. I
Oh,
forget which role. Resident Evil, one of the maybe, I don't know,
Oh,
but
wow.
but anyways, he died in that movie and then came back. But that was the entire plot. They gave him the John Con
sure.
plot because
But
of that. But
does Jorah need a speech fighting for Danny and dying? I don't think so. I
oh
mean,
no,
again, those two characters have such a. I mean, we're going back to the first episode of the show,
I
episode 1, season 1. He brings a gift to Daenerys. He instantly becomes one of her guards, her protectors, her confidants. You know, while I get the criticism of him as a character, him as a lecherous old man in the books, you know, I think there's a genuine respect there that showed Daenerys and showed Jorah have for each other, and I think it's touching. It's
Yeah,
it's
he got to
poignant.
die in the north,
Where he got to
and he got
die
to
in the
die
north.
fighting for his queen.
Yep, yep,
And
yep.
so, again, he had one of these arcs and these characters where, however the differences play out, he kind of paid his dues and did his things. As much as I criticize and joke, like he went through all the shit.
Right.
He did his plot elements of moving Tyrion around and things like that, interacting with Sam and these kinds of interesting moments with the sword and
yeah.
J.R. Mormont and all that. And so
And
I think it works.
and you're right. You guys are right. Like Amelia's acting in that scene was phenomenal.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Landing and crying for his mother. You know that she's in pain and that Ser Jorah is no longer with him. That was a moment I kind of teared up. I teared up with Theon. I kind of teared up with that as well.
I cheer up a lot. but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that was one of them too.
All right, so back to the Godswood, and I gotta say when I watched the episode last night, I was so tense as I've said throughout this episode. I almost didn't pay attention to the music.
Oh, I
the
paid
music
attention.
is so fucking good.
The music is fucking phenomenal. And right before we started the podcast, I was listening in my headphones to the track "The Night King," which is the sequence of the Night King entering. I think it's right after he raises the dead, and he enters Winterfell, and he's coming for Bran. It's just this buildup, and it's not a carbon copy. There's a lot of similarities though, and a lot of differences to Light of the Seven, to the opening number for the Winds of Winter, when Cersei's wildfire treason and plot emerges. And I think that's really interesting in the context of those being the two final villains, if you will. And we'll talk more about that toward the end. But the Night King emerges. The Whites have killed, or the Whites have surrounded the Godswood. Theon has done his last stand. He has died.
John the hero is backed into a corner.
John the hero is backed into a corner, hiding. That to me was a really stunning visual from I think it's the end of Two Towers, when Frodo and Sam are making their way through. Is it Osgiliath? Osgiliath, when Frodo climbs up on the top of the wall and kind of puts his hand out with the ring in front of the Nazgul. But as they're going through there, they're rushing through, they're hiding behind. And so even though obviously it's a lot lighter, the cinematography is much brighter. It was shocking to me how John in that sequence was, just running and hiding, and he couldn't move. I mean, every time he moved, Viserion was blasting, and I thought it was done really well.
It's great how they take him out of the action. It's this whole expected showdown, and it's a great subversion. It's realistic and built into the whole thing, and people, you can talk about when he just stands up and screams at Viserion, but you can see how tired he is the whole time.
Yeah.
When he's facing the Night King right before he raises all the dead, all the way through that sequence with the dragon, you can see in the acting how it's so good. You can see how tired he is, just heaving his chest and dragging his sword instead of holding it up, and just he's exhausted. He's been fighting for however many hours, all this shit, your adrenaline, whatever. He's rewrote a fucking dragon through the sky. And he's over it. He's like, if what I have to do is cut through this undead dragon to go fight the Night King and save my brother, that's what the fuck I'm gonna do. I thought it worked in that sense. Obviously he got his ass saved because he probably would have died there. And again, he said, "Don't bring me back." He was just ready. He's tired, and I think it worked as a subversion within the rules of the world as it was established, and all these things. And I like that there wasn't this big hero versus villain showdown.
I love that too.
It's fucking great.
Yeah.
They found a way around that worked.
It's just kind of funny because they had a 55-day night or 55 night shoot. He was over it. He could really channel his character. So,
I'm sure it wasn't hard to be like, fuck this.
Yeah.
So the Night King kills Theon, and he and the White Walkers edge closer and closer and closer and closer to Bran. If I remember correctly, Bran pretty much this whole time has been warging, and he comes out of the
right
trance.
Until the Night King shows up.
Yeah, he comes out of this trance, and he just turns, and that music just builds and builds and builds, and the Night King has this, this ice sword on his back, and his arm slowly goes for it, and then out of the darkness, Arya fucking Stark.
You mean Batman?
Sailing down through the air. And that turn of the Night King, when he just whips around and grabs her fucking throat and just starts squeezing, and she's just shaking, and she's, you're thinking, oh fuck, Arya's dead. This is dead.
Oh my god, a quick turnaround from seeing her to.
And then she just drops that Valyrian steel blade from the left hand. She grabs it with the right, and she just shoves it right into his chest. And he breaks into a million little pieces, and the White Walkers break into a million little pieces, and the Whites collapse.
What a moment.
And it's done. That's it. It's done. The War for the Dawn is over. The White Walkers are defeated. So what?
This blows up
is y'all?
Million.
Oh my god!
A million Azor Ahai theories, right?
A million Azor Ahai theories. A million. The White Walkers are gonna follow them south. A million. Just a million billion theories and ideas.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to say on it, so I'll do it quickly. I thought, because the Night King whipped around and caught her, and his movement, it's very. The sound effects they used, I thought he snapped her neck or stabbed her in the moment, because it was so quick. And I was like, oh fuck, he just killed her. And then she was like, oh, and I was like, oh, she's gonna have a Lyanna moment. She's gonna kill the giant in Winterfell, and stabs her. And I was like, oh shit, she's still alive. So I was really confused in the moment at first. And then I was like, okay, that's the just the sounds they gave him. But it was really, I did not expect her. She jumped. And yes, if you want to, critique, how she volleyed over the lieutenants and whatever. But it was a cool shot. They were going for it. Someone let the cinematographer take the lead on it. And which is fine. It's fine. But because it was an amazing shot.
Well, yeah, it was, and I think there has been such an interesting debate. We've alluded to it the whole time here. One of the biggest debates is surrounding how Arya came into that sequence and how her being the one to do it. And my initial reaction was just being surprised that Cersei outlasted the Night King, because I thought it was definitely going to be in reverse. And I think in the books, we'll probably see it dealt with that way, because I don't think Cersei will be around super long in the books. But again, for this show, which is about the throne, it makes sense. And so that's why I think it works. And like I rambled on about earlier about how it's satisfying in both mediums. But you know, when she comes out of nowhere, they have the shot of the White Walker and his hair kind of moving in her breeze.
Oh,
and they're focused on their ultimate goal. They've taken the bait because they're dumb zombies or whatever the fuck reason that they fell for the bait. Their prize is there. Their prize is within their reach. That's what they're focused on. Their leader is about to kill their great enemy, the three-eyed raven, and they're going to win. And it's going to be their whole accomplishment is going to work out, right? So they're focused on that. And she's got these skills that we've talked about that she has practiced and earned since the first or second episode, practicing with swords. And she gets trained as a water dancer. She gets trained in the Faceless Man. She's seen death. She's been around death. She's given it all these things. Is it super realistic that she jumped off a battlement or ran past them and leapt through the air? Like, are you really measuring? Oh, she's 12 feet, 10 feet. It doesn't matter. She earned it. She has the ability to do it. She has the weapon. She has the skills. She has the training. You're focused. They're focused on the goal. You know, Bronn knows what's going on. He's staring the Night King down. He trusts his fucking sister. And here she comes to save the goddamn day. Arya fucking Stark, hero of Planetos. Am I wrong?
Nope.
Am I fucking wrong? I'm just saying. You know, all the quibbles and things about how it played out. It's badass. Someone you know, floated the theory a couple of years ago. I think it was Joanna Robinson. But it was plausible. It was always within reach. It was earned. It was dramatic. It was somewhat unexpected, but still alluded to fairly explicitly the last time we saw her, and all these things. And it was fucking cool. It worked out, man. And where we go from here is the real interesting question, you know?
Sure. And you know, I said it from the beginning that you know, I was shocked, I was surprised, I was stunned, and those are all good things. Those are things that I want from Game of Thrones. You know, I said it to my wife afterward. She said, "What did you think?" And I said, "Well, that's not at all." And I'm not just talking about that last moment. That is not at all what I expected to go down. And she said, "Well, you should be happy with that, right?" And I said, "Absolutely. I don't want to know everything going into it. You know, I purposely avoided any kind of spoilers this year for that reason. But even the theory crafting, even the discussions, you know, what we've talked about here on the podcast, what we've read on Reddit, what we've looked at on Facebook, on Twitter, you know, what we just talked about more than 24 hours ago at Ice and FireCon is not at all what happened. So we should be very satisfied that they could surprise us. And I think that's important. I think the best thing that I've read for sort of my frustration, and I will say that my view last night to today has changed significantly. It's not a 180, but it's probably definitely, you know, a 90-degree turn from where I was.
And well, it's funny because you're a little more positive, and then I've gotten a little more cynical. But although but then when we have these talks like this, like I kind of balance myself out. Like,
well, and I think
I trust the writers of the show. Like, I trust them to make a great product. And even when you're disappointed, I think they still. Season 5 had a lot of great moments. As much shit as that gets, there's a lot that happens in that's very important to. And
context and execution really fucking matter.
Yeah.
And we had this great episode, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, that kind of works as a bridge between all the story that came before and the end game and all these things. It's like this, you know, the little pause there. But it puts the battle into context in terms of the stakes. But we don't know what's coming after. We don't know who's still going to die, who's going to betray who, how it's going to play out. Is Cersei going to die in the next episode, or is she going to die at the end of the last episode? Or, you know, all these Starks could still die, all these things. So having the end of the story. We're in the middle of it, and we're having all these.
We're not
hot
even in
takes
the
about
middle. We're not
these-
even in the middle. We have 3 more episodes that are the same length as this episode that just happened, I think.
Sure, but
So,
the point being, as far as number of episodes,
oh
right?
yeah, well yeah.
We're halfway through, right? So I'm just saying, you know, there's all this context that's left. Like we have an idea, okay, based on what we've seen up to this point, this is what this means, and this is how we feel about it.
Yeah.
But all of that could still change over the next 3 weeks, depending on how any of it plays out. We could still come back around and be like, oh man, compared to the rest of that crap, this is the real highlight of the fucking thing. Or I'll be like, oh shit, like everyone thought the Battle of Winterfell was like the whole big thing that we were waiting for all season long and the whole highlight of the thing, and comparing it to Helm's Deep and the biggest battle sequence of 55 Nights. But really, these last 3 episodes where they dealt with the human conflict was where they fucking brought it home and punched us in the gut. And this season, you know, so while we're talking about all these things, it's important to keep in mind that like once we see what happens in the next 3 episodes, that's when we can really say definitively what worked and what didn't in this context that we're talking about right now.
No, and I completely agree, and that's why that's why my initial reaction, I think I tweeted it, like I was like, I don't know how to feel. Like there was it was amazing, but like and I think the way I feel about it is going to depend on the rest of the season and what happens, and because there were a lot of great moments, very divisive moments but overall I think it was an amazing episode. But you know,
yes. So back to my point about Arya and the Night King, the best that I've seen to kind of capture my feeling is it's perfectly reasonable that Arya Stark would be able to do this. This is a build up of her character. She has the tool. Bran gives it to her at the spot where she ends up killing the Night King. He gave it to her in season 7 right there. The reverse, though, is not, and we talked about the Night King being a supervillain in this story and in this medium, and I get that now, and that's part of what's helped me turn the 90-degree angle. But it doesn't make sense for someone who is this looming existential threat, this thousands of year old, created by magic of the children of the forest, perhaps Stark ancestors, perhaps a first man, perhaps a Lord Commander of the Night, all these things that we thought he was, and he could still be. I mean, again, we've got the books coming that could change things dramatically. It's from that angle that I question, was this the right choice? Again, not Arya Stark. It's not that it's a woman. It's not that it's Arya. It's none of that. That makes sense from that angle. It doesn't make sense to me that the Night King can be killed with one blow of the Valyrian steel blade. And one of the questions I want to pose to you all, and I posed this to Jeff and Emmett, and they're actually going to feature it in their discussion tomorrow on their reaction, is why is it possible for the Night King to die by a stab from a Valyrian steel blade, a White Walker to die from the stab of a Valyrian steel blade or a piece of obsidian, but the Night King is immune to dragon fire?
yeah,
we've seen him walk through fire. You know, he's kind of like made it, you know, he used the force of the wind and snow around him to kind of dampen fire and walk through it. And we talk about dragon fires maybe having like a magical element. And I think in the books, you know, they play with George has a much better grasp and adherence to his mythology than the show. The show, you know, they went from Beric having to use a blood rite, you know, prayer sequence to light up his sword to just like, doing it at will. Oh, now I just need a flame, so I'm going to make a flame kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So in the show, they play fast and loose with some of that stuff. So acknowledging that, you can kind of let go of the expectation that that's going to be something fulfilling, because it's probably not, if you're looking for answers in those places. And so we know, we've seen in Hard Home John take out a White Walker with his Valyrian steel blade, and we know Dragonglass works and all these things. So it's reasonable to expect that it would work on the Night King. Sure, we expected maybe a bigger like fight sequence, because he has all these like badass moves with his weapons where he's like with his hands and all this cool shit that he's trying to show off. But then he doesn't actually fucking fight anybody, So it's like, okay, great. But as far as so the fire versus the dragon glass and the Valyrian steel, it's in that hazy mythology that the show plays with, and sometimes it adheres to and sometimes doesn't. And I think it's been established reasonably enough that White Walkers and the ilk can die from the blow from these kinds of weapons, and maybe that's not satisfying. That's one of those things where it works. It's not something where you're just like, that's fucking ridiculous. It doesn't even make sense. Like it kind of makes sense. They've kind of demonstrated this and led up to it. And if that works for you, like it works for me, it's fine. I don't mind it. If it doesn't work for you and doesn't quite land for you, that's not an unreasonable take where you're like, a bad person for feeling that way. Okay, that's perfectly legit, because they have these flaws built into the show that kind of lead to these things and lead to these conflicted views on things in the show, and that's part of it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it is completely. I mean, the Night King he's a White Walker, so to expect any differently, and like this could be something that is played out in the books where Euron becomes one and thinks he's the Night King, and he gets killed fucking really with a Valyrian steel sword because he thinks he's a god type character. I mean, I'm playing with headcanon now, but I mean, it's perfectly
dangerous territory.
Yeah, but it's perfectly reasonable for the Night King to just be another night or another White Walker or other. It's it's one of those things you play fast and loose with because again, the show's been on 10 years. They have to. The writers are probably tired. It's a day job for them that they're not.
Yeah.
Well, there's the points that they want to get to and the stuff in between. If it works for them, it works for them, and they're not going to overthink it and I don't know, bend themselves backwards to kind of like cross off these little check marks or whatever to have all the things exactly right. Like they're gonna fudge the things they need to fudge in the service of the story that they want to have in the spectacle. So
I think it goes back to, again, there's something just off to Arya doing it. Again, it's not from the Arya angle. There's just something off that a single blade can do this because Valyrian steel and obsidian is a byproduct of dragon fire, right? So you would think the same thing. Now, I will absolutely admit, if it was easy enough to just blow away the White Walkers with dragon fire, then that adds a superpower to Dany and the dragons that you're not able to overcome. Like, what chance would they ever have if that was going to be the way that you could easily just blow them away? So
I think that's why they're going to be taken out, man. Before they get to King's Landing, because like, what kind of fight is that if they can just blow the Golden Company away and then all of a sudden they have the superior numbers?
I'm curious about that because Rhaegal's still alive too. It's confirmed, I guess. So they still have the two dragons, and Ghost is still alive, which was, I thought he just fucking died. Like I thought he did a summer.
I totally agree with that.
So no,
I'm surprised, but I'm happily surprised by that. But yeah.
But I agree with you all. I mean, I think it's perfectly reasonable that an obsidian blade or a Valyrian steel sword or dagger
still feels
can be used to kill them. That's not the point. I think my question is just more, well, how is one which is made from the other? How, just what's the, and I don't expect the show to give me that answer. I don't even know if the books will
You'll
ever
get
give me that answer.
you'll
But it
get more of a
just
taste of it in the books,
yeah. That's just something I thought of. How is that possible? But anyways, that shouldn't detract from a remarkable episode. That nitpick, if you want to call it that, or that criticism, that to me does not just distract from my overall enjoyment of the episode. I thought the episode was really good, and I actually think, for me, one of the most powerful scenes, one, is that Davos survived, but two, that he follows Melisandre and he sees her become, it's from a distance, but he sees her become the older woman, and she just falls and passes away. I thought that was really powerful. I thought Melisandre was used very effectively in this episode. Back to our earlier points, sure, I wanted Fiery Hand and Red Priestess to roll up in there with her, but
But again, the show,
it was great.
And the show with the magic stuff has always kind of not quite pushed it as far, which is another great point that Emmett has made in the past. The book, you get these really strong glimpses into the magic and the way it works and interacts with the world, and obviously you get that in the show, but they've kind of held back from that full scale magic in the world building that would lead to like the Eldritch Apocalypse in the books. And so I think for them to pull back from that in this battle sequence, to not have it be fiery hands of doom and all that, kind of is in line with what they already have going on. She manipulates the fire. She does all that stuff. She would have been good to have in the Blackwater and Battle of Winterfell and all that stuff. Well, but I think them dialing back her powers a little bit, it grounds it in the reality as the show has established it.
And it actually makes me appreciate the fact that Arya killed the Night King more, in the fact that, one person can make a difference. One person who is fighting for their home, one person who's fighting for their beliefs, whatever, comes back to help out. And, I liked that she didn't show up overpowered. Yeah, she lit swords on fire and stuff. But
and that kind of didn't really
it doesn't help. Matter. Right. Her arc was more to give them a fighting chance and to give them a little hope, which is something we never see from Melisandre. I mean, well, I should say, the way she presents herself and her prophecies are so dark and mysterious and so overpowering, but it loses that. There's such a sting from it that people don't read, that it's a pretty hopeful message of light against dark and all that.
Yeah.
Again, she's ready to die. She, in that episode, the Red Woman, when we reveal her as being as old, we see her revealed as being as old as she is. That's her showing how tired she is of this battle for the light. And when Davos threatens her, the look of disdain and just complete indifference that she gives him is like some of the best acting that Carice Van Houten has done on the show. And so I think it, again, she's kind of like Jon when he's facing the dragon. Like, she's just rare to, her readings and the prophecies isn't perfect. And in the book, anyone that reads a prophecy ends up getting it wrong. And it kind of works that way in the show to some extent. So for her to know that she's needed and be in the right place at the right time, she helps where she can with the fire. She gives Arya, basically her mission there in that last sequence. It all fits. It all works together. And I think, the way that there was the lack of music, you're finally able to breathe and process what's going on with the others and the undead being wiped out. And you see her just able to let go, just to let go of all of that tension.
She was our breath at the end of the episode. Like, okay, we're just gonna fall down in the snow.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Like I felt very Blackwater vibes with her as well, because she always has that thing, like, if I was there, I would have made a difference. You would have won that battle. And you see she's back, and I love the fact that, like, she struggled with her faith again, like when she was trying to light the trench when Grey Worm wasn't doing shit because he was freaking out, and then, like, she just, like, kind of held on to it. Like, I think she made a huge difference in that battle. And it was just nice to see that she was there for the good of everyone and paid her dues. And yeah, it was just
Right.
what an amazing
Again,
actress too. Like, because she
right.
could really sell it with her eyes. And
again, a character who deserves death, but in the end, I think deserves the noble death that she got.
yeah,
So I want to move into some of the questions we have, and I want to try and keep these short. I don't know if
Sure.
Zach, if you have anything else that you wanted to say on Melisandre, but if not, we'll okay. All right, so 3 quick questions. Let's try and keep these short. What was your favorite moment of the episode?
Wow, favorite moment. The sequence, I think, in the hallway with Barrick and Sandor and Arya, is extremely my shit.
I'm gonna say I like the sequence in the Winterfell library. I thought that was really powerful. I thought it was really
super creepy,
scary. Yeah, very very scary. Thought it was done very well. The lights kind of bumping into things, them sensing the blood, but then not finding her there. Hearing the droplets of blood. I thought that was a really good sequence.
My favorite, like, sequence was
Sequence or moment doesn't matter.
yeah, no, Brienne and Jamie. I mean, and also, I don't know.
They
there's so many good
foreshadowed
ones,
it.
but
Will you fight by my side? They were there fighting side by side. It was a beautiful fucking thing.
and Jamie has his chops back again. Like, he's not as great as he once was, but he was good once as he ever was.
Yeah, that's one thing we didn't talk much about, because a lot of these characters just, they're just fighting. They're just part of the action.
They'll get more moments in King's Landing.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that's one of the more interesting things going forward is Jamie's alive, and what does that mean for the King's Landing plot? So, next question, Zach. What was there a moment or sequence you didn't like?
I talked about how the Theon charge didn't quite land for me, although I wouldn't quite call that a dislike. I guess I think the thing I didn't like the most was it looked really cool, the Dothraki just charging ahead, kind of leaving the safety net behind. It just really make a ton of sense to me, even though it looked really badass.
I would say that
together.
That I think that there potentially should have been a few more people die, just to raise the stakes a little bit. I'm glad that all these people didn't die. I'm glad that we get them the next 3 episodes, next 2 episodes, next 1 episode, whatever it is. But I think a couple more people should have died just to raise the stakes a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. See, you helped me out here. I wanted to see Theon try to sacrifice himself, get, like, thrown out of the way or something, or helped. But I thought Bran was gonna die, and he was gonna do his kind of "you're in the end game now" kind of moment. And Theon would live to help him out to like, because I didn't it's not my least favorite moment because I'm just still trying to process this episode. So, like, it had so many good moments. I think all the moments weren't none of them were terrible, and none of them were. They were all kind of very satisfying, but
Cool.
Zach, what surprised you the most about the episode?
What surprised me the most was that it turns out Cersei outlives the Night King. It surprised me somewhat that it was Arya, although, like we talked about, that was kind of alluded to or earned in a lot of ways. Surprised that the others were defeated. Actually, I thought that would get dragged out a little bit longer.
Yeah,
I'm kind of the same way. Like I did not expect for the long night to end here. I thought it would be drug out, but yeah. That's what I got.
I think mine is that Bran wasn't more instrumental in the defense of
That's true.
Winterfell.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's a bad thing. He was,
I was confused at what he do?
was the target.
He was the bait. That's all he was.
He was the bait. He was working into those ravens to kind of see where the Night King was. I mean, I saw someone say, well, they could actually use Bran to figure out where the Night King and where all the White Walkers and stuff were. But anyways, I think that surprised me the most because I thought he would be a little more instrumental in either the actual defeat of the others or flipping the dragon, something like that.
Totally.
Now that leads me to two final questions, and I think these are going to be a little more complex, and they might take a little time. And I know we're we've been here for a while tonight, and we still got to talk to you, Zach, about your place in the fandom. So I want to talk about this in the context of the 3 twists that Gurm told D&D in 2013. Okay, perfect. This is going to be good then. We know that D&D are these final seasons since season 5. They're kind of going off an outline of how George envisioned the series to end, the characters to end, etc. But he told them, and they say this, and I'm sure he told them more things, but they specifically cite that he gave them 3 really big twists that were yet to come in the books. And the first one is the fact that Shireen is sacrificed by Stannis, which occurs in season 5, episode 9. The second is the hold the door, the truth about Hodor's name and Hodor's reason for being and what Bran did to him and what that means for the 3-eyed raven and the White Walkers, etc. And then they say that there's one that comes at the very end. Now, a lot of people, I don't think I'm wrong here, but a lot of people have theorized that very final moment that they're alluding to is Daenerys having to sacrifice herself to defeat the others, to end the long night, etc. This changes that, perhaps. I think there's 99% chance that this changes that. So my question to you is, what do you think that sequence could be? And maybe that's too complex of a question to throw out there. But if you want to break it down into, is it political? Is it magical? Is there something political that happens in the end that's going to be really shocking? Is there something magical that comes back in the end that's going to be shocking? What do you think, Zach?
So this is where I think it is going to be political, like we talked about in the beginning a few hours ago, with Ned Stark losing his head and the human element. The long night, as short as it was, is over, and now what we have left is this human conflict. I think that the magic element is going to be there insofar as much as we've already seen it. I don't think there's going to be any real surprises coming with that. and I obviously could be wrong, but I just don't see it happening. I think the bittersweet ending, I think the final twist, that third thing they talked about, I don't think we've seen it yet. I think it's going to be related to a character death or betrayal, and I think it's going to fucking sting. I think it's going to be just like Hodor. Shireen was unpleasant. I'm sure, in the show, I'm sure in the books that George is going to handle it in a much different way, and it's still wrenching. Hodor is one of the times that I cried the most watching the show, if not like my worst, or most intense sobbing experience, or whatever you want to call it. That was fucked up. It sucked, to see how it happened, and Brand's hand in it, and the tragedy of the whole cyclical nature of it. I think it's going to be impactful on that level or greater. It might not be in a big explosion taking out 20 people at once or anything like that, but it's going to be something rooted in character, rooted in politics, related to whatever kind of 5 or 7 top characters in the story. It's going to come in the last end of the second to last episode, or somewhere in the last episode, and it's gonna rip our hearts out, whatever it is.
So I love it, and I might, I don't know, what I think, but I thought would probably make sense is that third thing is the battle ending with an undisputed conflict in the South, and maybe the books end the same way. Like the next 3 episodes are completely fan service from the show writers, giving us the fan service, but the bittersweet ending is these characters don't die. It ends with them defeating the Night's King, a lot of their army depleted, but they never resolved the issue in the South. I don't think it'll be Cersei. I think it'll be Fagon, but Cersei may still be alive in the books at this point, but maybe just a sort of hopeful, or whatever, but like I think that we might have gotten our third twist. And the next 3 is fan service for show watchers, and for us, for the book readers, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the thing is. I mean, I still sort of think Daenerys dies in the end. I don't know now when or where that might happen based on what occurred in this episode. Again, back to our conversation earlier in the episode that perhaps this final season is out of order when eventually compared to A Dream of Spring, so it's quite possible. I think there could be a potential conflict. I don't know how they could do that in 3 episodes between Jon and Dany. I definitely don't think we're gonna get a Dance of Dragons over top the walls of King's Landing. But we talked earlier in the episode about the fact that Dany fights with an obsidian spear. We all hope Sansa would do the same, but she's not shown doing that. I sort of think, and if you look at the next time teaser, it looks like the Northern Lords are cheering on Dany. So do they see her as the one who saved them? Does that cause strife between her and the Starks? That, now wait a minute, this is our castle. We're the one that built this grand coalition. Arya's the one that that stabbed the Night. I don't know. I'm not sure. We still have the question of why Bran felt it was important for Jon to know his true heritage before the conflict. That's left unresolved. There's all these questions that are going to happen. And I don't think in the books it's going to be very easy, especially if Dany dispatches Fagon to then turn and find out there's another fucking Targaryen with the claim to the throne. That's going to be hard for her to deal with, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
My thoughts are 2 things. and again, I'm not saying these are the things that George is alluding to, but based on what happened this episode, I want to talk about two sequences that I think kind of stand out for me. One, Tyrion and Sansa. I think they're getting back together. I don't think they're getting back together in terms of husband and wife. I think somehow Tyrion tells Sansa the truth about Jon because Dany tells him, or Sansa tells Tyrion the truth about Jon because Jon tells her. And that begins some kingmaker plot, queenmaker plot, or whatever between the two of them. I don't think it's the fact that Sansa is still being cold and distant about Daenerys and Missandei's words, and the fact that Tyrion and Sansa, have that moment back. I just think there's going to be something there that kind of breaks, and I don't know if it's those two characters that do it, but I think it's sort of set up here for that. Zach, what do you? Oh, sorry, Brett, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to say I think we might be going back to a political drama here. I don't know, but go ahead. I don't have much to say on it, but because I'm just as confused as you are. Like, I don't know where the next part of this story is going. So,
well, I think that moment between them was more about their humanity in the moment and that kind of recognition of each other on a level that they couldn't when they were married and kind of both in these really intense circumstances where they're getting pushed around and forced into marriage alliances and all these kinds of things. And now they're in a different kind of hell, a literal hell, and demons are walking around past them, and they're there together, and it is what it is. So I think as far as moving forward, I don't know that that their political minds might meld well together, but I think that Jon and Dany are going to have to resolve the R plus L situation, and then they're going to bring that to everyone else, and they're going to have to. It's going to have to be known. It can't be this big thing that's just like still a secret. It's been revealed 3 different times. Over the course of the show, it's going to have to get revealed again to the Northern Lords, I think. And they're going to have to react to it in whatever way. And my guess, based on nothing but the preview for next season, like just based on nothing, is I think that Dany will be cool about letting the North be independent because she's going to want to go down, wipe out Cersei, and just do her thing. And they're dealing with the aftermath of the end of this existential threat. And I think it'll be like a more positive kind of feeling. And maybe she leans into the Mad Queen stuff. Maybe there is still some ongoing conflict between her and Sansa. I kind of hope not. But I think it comes down to them versus Cersei kind of straight up, and kind of whatever little conflicts or things come out of that in the next few episodes.
I think I almost agree. I think the little preview we got of people cheering. I mean, it could be that. I mean, they just fucking won the war. It could be the announcement that Jon is he is one of the heirs. I don't. Maybe it could be a wedding announcement, like that they're gonna squash. I mean, I just never understood why it was a problem because they're already dating. Like, hey, let's just you know we do the Queen Alysanne Jaehaera stuff. I think Cersei's going to be season 7 Cersei again, where she's pulling out the stops and she's gonna cause some tragedies in the next 3 episodes before she goes down. I think she'll go down, but yeah,
I think so too. I think she'll go down.
I want to posit one more, and I could be completely bonkers here, and you all can perfectly say that I'm bonkers. I still feel. I think we all think that the magic in the end dies out. That dragons die out. Maybe you all disagree. Dragons die out. All this. My question then turns to why is Bran still alive? I don't want to say this, but it's the easiest way to explain perhaps what I'm thinking. So I'll say that potentially there could be a shocking twist at the end that involves him or something he's done. I do not want to say he's the Night King. I do not think that that's true. I said it on Twitter. I'm only half joking that he might be the Great Other now. But I still think there has to be some purpose for him. And I'm not sure it's just getting in a tree and telling Sam to write down the whole history of Westeros. So
honestly,
is there something at the end that you think with Bran?
I mean, I hate to be a wet blanket here, but I think they kind of fumbled it, and I think that he kind of outlasted his importance relative to the plot. And I think now, in terms of the show, he's just an exposition bomb. So he'll have the information. He didn't have necessarily information on how to defeat the Night King. He just was the bait for the Night King. So he's got the memories. He's got the three-eyed raven thing. But he's there to, either confirm something about R plus L equals J. He's there to drop some truth bomb about Cersei and some prophecy related to her or something else. It's going to be something probably not that satisfying because that's how the show's handling him. We have our expectations based on our somewhat better understanding of the character and how he fits into the plot and the magic that the show's kind of sidestepped and all these things that we're immersed in as book readers that the show just kind of doesn't really work with. And I don't think they're going to. I want to be optimistic and say there's more to it. But at this point, with the Night King dead and the army of the dead defeated, he's just an exposition bomb. Could be wrong. That's how I see it.
I don't think you're crazy in that thought because, I mean, Bran, he could see the future, the past. Like I think he's pretty overpowered, maybe, even though he didn't really do much in the battle. But like he could potentially just sell out anything, or anyone. So I don't know. I just feel like this is this might be fan service, and I think the books might end with the battle Winterfell, people winning, people are alive that we don't know, and but then it's a potentially a next Dance of the Dragons going on. But I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure where the show's going at this point.
Exactly.
I'm excited for it. Don't
Yes,
get me wrong.
That is
the first
one of
time.
the.
Well, it's the first time in a long time I don't think anybody knows where it's going, and that's great. Like
it is. It's super exciting.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I mean, it's going to make these next 3 weeks very enjoyable. Not to really have any idea what's going to happen because I don't even have a theory.
Yeah.
On what could potentially happen. I mean, I just dropped a couple, but I just think, just my last thing I'll say, I think there has to be a greater purpose to Bran, and that could be,
sure.
Being sullied by the books or something. But
that's what I forgot to say that. That's what worries me because I was preaching that with Barrack. I'm like, he's got to give the last kiss. Like, why the fuck would he be in the show anymore? Like, why bring that actor back and pay that actor when that's what you're gonna do to him? And yeah, he went out great, and like he but like they took out Anguy, and like people talk about him, and like you killed Thoros. I mean, Thoros had more in common with and more chemistry to the Hound. So I didn't understand why he was there, and then when he went out the way he did, I'm like,
Yeah,
why? Why did?
that's some of the show kind of. I think again, cutting plots and consolidating plots
Mm,
and kind of somewhat mishandling certain things. I don't think Thoros should have like he was a name, a recognizable character, so they had a death for that episode that made it kind of weighty in its own way, even though I disagreed with the choice and the way he went out. Barrett kind of lasted a lot longer than obviously his character does in the books, and you know his ultimate purpose was to protect Arya, who is the savior of humanity, and it's tied into what Melisandre saw and communicated to Arya, and the reason that she came back to Winterfell for that battle in the first place. It all
wow.
kind of
Okay.
came together there.
You narratively tied that in for me because it's all the R'hllor worshippers.
Yeah, so to
In
me,
that,
that kind of
yeah.
came full circle, and the layers um, of that religion and how it's interacted with Arya and how it's kind of one of the real clearly working supernatural elements of the show. We see the Shadow Baby, we see the multiple resurrections, we see her control fire. All these things that are like kind of proven. Where you talk about like the faith of the Seven, where like it's kind of like pie in the sky type shit, where it doesn't really play out in reality of the show.
Yeah.
So for me, narratively, it kind of came together in that sense to protect Arya and to get her where she needed to go to be in position to kill the motherfucking Night's King.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you tied it in for me. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, one last final thing I'll say, and then we want to get to your song, Wolfman Zack.
Cool.
I really wish the White Walkers, the actual White Walkers, not the Night King, the White Walkers had been awesome to see them have a one-on-one fight with like Brienne or
Oh yeah.
That's what
Oh
I
yeah.
thought was
Jamie or
gonna
something. I
happen.
mean, I thought you
Well,
got
you
so
had
much
all the Valyrian steel in play.
right. You got
That's
all
something you
these
expected to see.
right. You got and and
That was maybe a
especially
missed
them.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Sure.
especially Jamie and Brienne because again, it would be
Ice in Winterfell.
right, exactly. That's what I was just going to say. We get the two halves of ice fighting to protect Ned Stark's home, and I think that was a missed opportunity.
It's good headcanon.
Yeah. So, Zach, as we said, we first of all we want to thank you. This has been an amazing discussion.
It's
So
been a
much
hard
fun.
episode to talk about too.
It has
because
been, yeah. It's very complex. It's very defining for the show, but also for what the end game could be in the books and all that. And I think it's good to marinate in this and talk about it. But one of the things that we do here is we've got fans that join us. We try to capture their stories. So we want to conclude tonight by talking to you about how you got into A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. So talk a little bit about that. Did you read the books first, or did you watch the show and then read the books?
No, so I hadn't even heard of it. Nothing about it. It was not really in my atmosphere at all. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we started dating late in 2011. So after the first season had aired, and a couple of my friends had gotten into it. So my girlfriend basically sat me down and was like, "You're gonna like this show. It's about this cool shit with this political intrigue and some magical sorcery stuff involved, and you're really gonna like it." And we watched the first season and binged it, and Ned's beheading was just obviously a huge indelible moment along with everything else, and I really just got swept up in it. And then kind of somewhere around the second season, I started um, kind of picking up on the differences between the books and the show, and I didn't really want to be left out of that. So I think around the second season is when I picked up the books and read through all those.
Cool. What about the fandom? How did you get involved in the fandom?
So again, that was a lot of just being on Twitter. A buddy of mine from the pre-Twitter days, Ruben at Lies and Perfidy on Twitter. We would just be chatting about it a lot, and just kind of by osmosis, I'd be finding, seeing retweets of people in the fandom and following more people. And as I got more and more into the show and into the books and just wanting to explore the different theories and all these things, I just kind of found all these people. And I remember at one point asking about female members of the fandom or non-male members of the fandom anyway, that had good analysis and podcasts and essays and things like that. And so just kind of like growing it that way and seeing who ran in, not in what circles, but just the conversations between Emmett and Jeff before they started the podcast. They'd have these like super interesting discussions about complex stuff like they dig into in the podcast, and they'd be having these things on the timeline on Twitter, and you have 5 different people responding to that all have some cool shit to say and things you've never thought about or whatever quirky aspect of their personality. And I just, grew it from there and thought it was great.
Awesome. Which episode or season of the show is your favorite and why?
So for me, that whole kind of Kissed by Fire stretch, that whole season 3 and 4 stuff, the Hound and Arya, the Riverlands plots, to me, it's just like really pure stuff. It's well adapted from the books. The stuff they added and changed, I think, was really great. It's such a sweet spot. And that Kiss by Fire episode for me, it's got the Brotherhood, it's got Sandor, it's got this whole magical element. It's got Arya saying all these really emotional, gut-wrenching things about I could be your family and running away and all this stuff. And the whole stretch and that whole era to me is just like Thrones at its peak. And I've liked a lot of this later stuff. The Field of Fire, to me, like when I got my new Ultra HD TV, that was the first scene I put on. To test it out, because it's just like one of the coolest things I've ever seen on fucking television. So
yeah, that run from, let's see, Kiss by Fire is episode 5 of season 3. That run from episode 5 of season 3 through the end of season 4, those are some fucking phenomenal episodes in my book.
Top notch.
What about the books? Which is your favorite book and why?
I really like Clash and Storm. As far as the books, it's still got all the kind of political stuff. Again, a lot of that Riverland stuff, but just all the shit with Walder Frey and all these kind of machinations and the characters get introduced to along the way before it gets kind of sprawling and messy. It's still somewhat contained, but the world building is still exploding in a super interesting way. That's the stuff that really resonates with me.
Storm's my favorite. I do love Feast, though. I think I don't know. It's becoming more of my favorite. So
Feast is. I'm excited to get back to it on my reread, but Feast is kind of up there for me, honestly.
It's really hard to pick favorites.
It super is.
What about a favorite chapter or plot line or character in the books that you're drawn to? I mean, or show, whatever.
Yeah. So again, for me, the stuff that Emmett that we've talked about, he's got his Euron stuff. Chloe's got her like Ashara Dane stuff and Lyanna and all that stuff. For me, the stuff that really just hits me is all the Brotherhood stuff. Thoros, Beric, the kind of Robin Hood with a twisted kind of prism, take on it. That's where I'd see myself in that world, I think. Kind of away from the big cities and just trying to be with the merry band of pranksters or whatever it's called, camping and fighting and singing and getting drunk and all this stuff. It's it kind of, and it's also what grounds the world in reality while also touching on the supernatural stuff with R'hllor and all these, the resurrections and the whole thing about that Beric says about, can I dwell on what I scarce remember in his castle in the marshes? That to me it resonates so deeply. And Sam kind of alluded to this and the whole thing with Bran being the target and the memory of history. It's like, if you don't remember it, did it happen? What was the importance of it? If you can't remember it, was it worth it to go through it, and all these different implications that has, and the weight of that to me, I just fucking love it. I just fucking love it.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Okay. I'm not
Thanks.
gonna. We're gonna have to talk, because we're gonna have to talk a little more about this.
Yeah,
But
you know where to find me.
yeah, and we'll have to bring you back on too.
It would be my
sometime.
pleasure, man. I've had a blast tonight.
All right, man. That was an amazing episode to experience with you. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing your story, sharing several hours with us tonight, talking
My pleasure.
through the long night, and it was
We made it.
a harrowing experience. Yeah,
We made it.
We made it.
I don't think any of us thought we would be where we are, but that's a good thing, and I think the fandom has a lot to look forward to in episodes 4, 5, and 6. So, thank you again, Wolfman Zack.
Thank you.
This brings us to a close tonight. We'll be back next week for episode 4. We'll have a special guest with us then. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Planetos Podcast. You can listen to our program on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, SoundCloud, Google Play, and other platforms. Rate and review us. We'd love to have some more ratings and reviews. Make them 5 stars, please. That helps us get the podcast out there on iTunes and other platforms. So join us next week for episode 4 of Game of Thrones Season 8, the final season. So we'll see you then, and we'll see you around Planetos. Good night.